All right, everyone. It is Friday, and you know what that means. It is time for the Manufacturing E-commerce Success Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Damon Pistolka. That pretty gentleman right over there is Kurt Anderson, co-host. You're just glowing today, Kurt. Who are we talking with today? Let's get this thing off. We're going to be leading with respect, man. This is going to be, that's it. Leading with respect delivers powerful results. I didn't get the whole title out at once. Sorry.
That's all right. Hey, that was man. Damon, you did. Hey, we that was an Oscar-winning performance right there. So we give you an A+. That was great. So, man, I am just so excited. What a great week it's been. I was in Chicago all week.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this little shindig today for months. And what an absolute honor. What a privilege to have our dear friend, Dr. Gena Cox, with us on the show. Dr. Gena, happy Friday. How are you today?
Oh, I'm really excited to be here. It seems like we've been planning this for quite some time, which just is an indication of how important it is because we had to prepare. And no, I really appreciate being here, and it's really a delight. And this is my first time getting to chat with Damon, and it was nice that he explain to me the correct pronunciation of his last name. I'm going to challenge most of your listeners to say, I know how to correctly pronounce Damon's name, and I bet you don't.
That's a good, you know what? That's a great little bragging point right there. So I absolutely love it. So we've got a bunch of things. So we've got an award-winning author here. We just have a thought leader of the industry here. And we have so much to unpack, so much to cover. Now, Dr. Gena, I want to go back in time just a little bit. Now, first off, Damon, we're here talking about respect. I was going to save this for the middle part of the show. Why don't we dive in right now? So Damon and I, we've been planning a duet for weeks now, and we are going to sing Aretha Franklin's Respect. Damon, are you ready? We're going to go on 3. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
We'll save it for later.
Okay.
We'll save it for later. So today we are talking about let's see if I can, I'm a horrible speller, Damon. Let's see if I can do it. RESPECT. We are talking about respect with Dr. Gena Cox, guys. Drop a note in the chat box. Let us know that you're out there. Give a huge hello to Dr. Gena. You absolutely want to connect with her on LinkedIn. Gena, I know if I recall correctly, you have like a little bit of an international flavor upbringing. Am I close on that?
I mean, you could say that. I was born in England. I grew up in Barbados. I've lived in the United States now for 40-something years. So I've lived here longer than in any other place. And so from that perspective, and I think the other thing that's relevant to that is that most of my clients over the decades have tended to be in global companies. And so that's been another opportunity to either work with people from all over the world, or in some cases to actually get to visit them in the places where they did that work. The global perspective on our conversation is important to me because it's the one thing I know, as I have done all my work, is that people are the same wherever we go, and that all of these differences that we perceive they're really cultural differences often, but at the very least, it's helpful for us to take a little time to kind of understand what the difference is, not to judge it or evaluate it, but just to understand it, because it certainly helps us, even if you think about that from a travel perspective.
Well, I absolutely love that. And let's go. Damon, can we jump in the time machine for a second? Let's go in the time machine. So Dr. Gena, we're going to go in a little time machine for a second. Let's go back in time. As a little girl growing up, whether in England, Barbados, as a little girl growing up, please share, who was your hero? Who was your hero as a little girl growing up?
Yeah, that person is still my hero. She just happens to be deceased, but that's, it doesn't really matter. And that is my maternal grandmother, because I had a maternal grandmother who had, I guess, like in the United States terms, probably like a 5th grade education on paper. She did not have a very long formal education, but I think she'd hold her own with anyone, anytime, anywhere, because what I observed from her over the years was that as a child she kind of taught me, first of all, how to deal with people, because she was always pleasant, very, very specific and clear about what she wanted, but also very easy to talk to. She was an entrepreneur. She was always coming up with some idea about some new way to make money, because that was something that, was necessary, and she would figure out how to do those things. But the other thing about her that made her my hero was that she truly was just sort of a problem solver. And so I had this sense of comfort and not having to sort of worry too much about things, because I believe for a long time that if you have a challenge and you sort of put your mind to it, you can probably come up with a solution. And so that's why she's my hero.
Can-do attitude. Is that what we're hearing from Grandma?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm sorry if I missed. Did you mention Grandma's name? What's Grandma's name?
Her name is Beryl. Was Beryl. Yeah.
Beryl. Well, hey, she's looking down and just looking at her wonderful grandchild and just really just super excited of what you accomplished over your career. And it's great because when you see somebody with success, Damon, we always love to say like success leaves clues. And, you know, there was somebody behind that success. And so we're giving a shout out to Grandma today. So absolutely love that. Hey, guys, again, drop a note in the chat. We got Whitney here saying hello. Damon, grab those hellos, will you? Whitney's here saying, happy Veterans Day. So, hey, God bless our veterans out there. It's Veterans Day. Let's say it's Veterans Day weekend. We applaud you. We salute you. Thank you for all you've done for our country. And so happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there. Let's keep it moving forward. So Dr. Gena, so you little girl growing up, Grandma's your hero. You're what led you to organizational psychology? When you went to undergrad, can you go there? Like what inspired you to earn your PhD? I'd love to hear that.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a reporter. I used to see these reporters on TV. It was the BBC, and they were always very serious, and they had these big ideas, and they were all over the world. And I thought it would be the most glamorous thing. And I did have the opportunity for a couple of years, right at what would be like a junior college here in the United States. I did have a couple of years of opportunity to work as an apprentice with a daily newspaper. And that was a great experience. I got to work on the business beat. And so it was on the business beat as a reporter in a small country, Barbados, where because it was small, the reporters really knew everybody and had access to everybody. And I would trail along behind, more experienced reporters. And that was when I got to think about something I had never thought about before, which is the workplace and all the dynamics that occur in that, because it wasn't something I would have ever thought about, I don't think. And so I discovered that there are a lot of shenanigans that go on in business places, and that most of the time when organizations were on the front page of our newspaper, often for something bad, it wasn't something to do necessarily with their financial outcomes. They would still be perceived as successful organizations financially, but there would be a lot of stuff going on with the human element. So I kind of knew that. I learned that. I tucked it away. But when I started college, I decided I would study psychology for that reason. And then I met a woman from the University of Michigan, Institute for Social Research, actually. And she had a PhD in social psychology. And this woman, Dr. Gayleen Perot, who is also deceased at this point, is the person who introduced me to the idea of organizational psychology. And I was like, wait a minute. It's kind of like journalism. You get to study, you get to explore and learn and get some insights and share them with other people. And it's in the business environment. There we go. So that was how I started.
Well, I absolutely love it. And just, and again, we're going to dig in your fierce writer, author for different magazines. And so we're going to dig into that. Hey, Ethel is here today. So happy Friday to you. And thank you for dropping. Hey, Whitney, thank you for the little note there. Appreciate that.
Yep.
So then if you don't mind, again, I just want to give everybody a little bit of a background on who Dr. Gena is. You've had like an incredible career of education, Fortune 500 companies, Raymond James, IBM, University of South Florida. Just talk a little bit, for Damon and I are huge we're proud girl dads. Yep. Just for, young women out there, just, share a little bit of like your corporate climb, education, how you kind of led your path.
Yeah, so early on, like everybody else, I was sort of more stumbling through things and trying to figure out what's what. So I figured, that I didn't necessarily have any plan or purpose for my career. Even after I finished a PhD, it was more like, okay, now I got this, let's get a job and see where it goes. But I have to tell you, the one thing I learned, my first job after my PhD was at Raymond James Financial. And I talk about Raymond James a lot. I'm a big fan of the company. And the reason is, I could have stumbled into another company. It might have been a larger company. It might have been who knows what. It just happened to be this particular one. And that was because I did my PhD at the University of South Florida in Tampa. And Raymond James was headquartered down the street in St. Petersburg. And when they reached out to the university and said, we're looking for an IO psychologist, I learned about it. And I said, well, I might as well apply because I really didn't want to leave Florida. Most of my colleagues were going to New York City. They were going to LA. They were going to Chicago, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and so on. Tampa Bay was not considered to be the center of activity for IO psychology, but I went there and had the opportunity to be there at a time when the company was young enough that I could see and watch on a daily basis how Tom James and his colleagues were building this company. And so, at the time they were like a little upstart in Tampa, Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida, competing against all the big, 200-year-old companies on Wall Street. And everybody was like, yeah, right, sort of thing. And so what they believed, what that company believed, what Tom believed was that talent would be the competitive advantage that they would have over all these big companies. They really believed that. So they were looking for an IO psychologist to help them create assessments that they could use to identify the best talent that they bring into the organization for their entry-level jobs, for their leadership jobs, and so on, because they couldn't get people to come down from Wall Street. They had to build the talent in-house. And so I learned from that first job that regardless, for those of you who are listening and you're starting out, it really does matter who you're working with and where you're doing that work. So think carefully about the culture of the organizations that you join at any point in your career, even more so than about the actual tasks you're going to perform, because that's what's going to determine the impact it has on your life over time.
Thank you for that history, because I didn't know that
incredible.
That was fantastic to hear about, as a little startup trying to compete with Wall Street. What an inspirational story that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I remember being there at the time when the head of marketing suggested that Raymond James Stadium, they put their name on Raymond James Stadium.
Yeah.
And at the time, that was an unusual thing to do. But I think they did it because it was a way to get national visibility for a brand that no one knew. And there have been so many clever decisions I watched them make. It's just been amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Wow. It is. And you talked about something that they were doing there that in that time frame, there were probably just a handful of companies in the world really thinking about developing testing to really identify talent.
Yeah.
And before, like you said, just identifying talent and us bringing in the best talented people.
Right.
That's groundbreaking in those days, really, because it was going in places where most companies were just trying to hire people, and you came from the right school, you got the right thing. But when you can really zero in on this person has the values and personality traits that really resonate with us as our highest talented people do, it's a game changer.
Yeah. And they were definitely a pioneer. I mean, you have the history of testing and assessment in the United States and basically in the world started with the United States military as they tried to select people to do specific military jobs, especially starting at World War II. And we all know about the test that then eventually all candidates eventually had to take, and then they would determine, sort of what career path you would have in the military. So the whole idea of assessment for that purpose was something that IO psychology started. Why Tom James and the folks at Raymond James felt so strongly about it, I don't 100% know the origin of that idea, but I know that Tom's dad, who actually founded the company, was the one who had this fundamental idea. And Tom had gone to Harvard Business School and been exposed to all kinds of things. So he just found a way to implement it, to sort of make it come alive. And so they definitely were able to get the competitive advantage that came from, building talent in-house. They had this concept as well that was relatively new at the time, Raymond James University, where they said, we know you're not going to come down from Wall Street, but we're going to train everybody who works in our company to really understand financial services. And to this day, I'll never forget what I learned about compounding, the effect of compounding from the training that they taught that I had participated in.
Wow. So cool.
That is such a fascinating story.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is, because you think about, Tampa, Florida, not necessarily, the hotbed for financial, brilliance. And just yet, what a brilliant strategy of hey, we can't compete with those guys. So it's really kind of, you think like I love when people talk about the American Revolution and hey, we're going to be swift and nimble. We're not going to do the traditional tactics that everybody else is doing to take down the big Goliath. So I absolutely love that. So let's slide in here, Dr. Gena. You have, if it's time, I'd love to talk about your book.
Oh, sure.
You is there one? Do I see a little something over your shoulder there?
Oh yeah, my little book, Leading Inclusion.
So let's go there. Let's talk. So again, vast corporate career and led you to write a book. What inspired you to write a book? And then let's take a dive in. Give us a little Cliff Note version, because folks, you really need to go out and get this book. Talk about what inspired you to write the book, and let's talk about the book.
Well, I guess you could say I've always wanted to write a book. I've wanted to be a writer. I've always felt like this would be my domain. But the opportunity to write a book is something that one has to consider very carefully. It doesn't come along every day. And even though I thought about it, it was always an abstraction sort of thing. But in 2020, some things happened that completely changed my life. First of all, in March of 2020, Breonna Taylor was killed in the state of Kentucky. And I don't know why, but it had a profound emotional effect on me. Well, I say I don't know why. Unfortunately, what I mean was she had not been the first person to whom this unfortunate circumstance had occurred. But because she was younger, I think she could have been my daughter in some ways. That's how I thought about her. It really stopped me in my tracks and caused me to ask myself, Gena, what can you do to be a part of the solution of this problem we have in our country where people don't really seem to see each other as you would want them to? And then, believe it or not, a couple months later, George Floyd was killed. Actually, I associate the Breonna Taylor event with my sort of epiphany, my sort of coming alive, my decision to write the book. The May event was just, it just reinforced it. But I had spent, decades studying human behavior in the workplace. I had spent decades working in organizations myself, and I fully understood this issue. I understood it especially from the lens of an immigrant who had come to the country, at 20 years old. And I remember thinking when I came here, I had left an environment where all kinds of people, including that grandmother Beryl, would say to me, "Oh, Gena, you're fantastic. You're going to do really well." Like that was my brand. That's who I thought I was. But when I came to the United States, I say in the book that it kind of felt like a veil had fallen because I began to notice that people's reactions to me in the United States were very, very different than anything that I'd experienced before. And unfortunately, some of those reactions were negative. And so as I had my corporate career, I was always looking down on it. I was studying it, yes. I was advising leaders, yes. But I was also living my own personal experience. And so I clearly understood that there's a problem here. There's a problem. I use the word inclusion. I don't get hung up on the words a whole lot, but I used the word inclusion in the title of my book, Leading Inclusion, because when I say inclusion in the workplace, I'm just talking about the day-to-day experience that any one employee has, regardless of their characteristics. But of course, if their characteristics cause them to have a different experience because of those characteristics, then that's exclusion. It's not inclusion. And so this interest in this topic was something I'd had all along, but as I had been advising leaders for decades, it wasn't something that got talked about. So I've always been a leadership impact, organizational culture, and employee experience focused advisor. Those have always been my areas, my lanes. And this issue didn't come up very often. And so after 2020, I said, let me sort of be focused on it. Let me be more willing to talk very directly and plainly about some of these issues. And that was what prompted me to write the book. And that's why the subtitle of the book is Drive Change Your Employees Can See and Feel, because it's all about day-to-day experience.
Gosh, I absolutely love it. So, hey, we got a couple comments.
Here, I'll drop in here. We got Wilson. How you doing, Wilson? We got
Asha,
and Tran. Drop another one.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for the comments, everyone. But wow, that's just, I don't even know what to say.
All right, so I want to keep digging into the book. So now you were talking about leading inclusion. Now you and I had a wonderful conversation, just kind of like, the preach that you're doing. And I want to talk about your company, kind of like, how you make the world a better place. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But you've shared, the title of our conversation today is respect. Let's go into inclusion leading to respect. Let's go there if we could.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Kurt. In the book, I talk about respect as the primary, about respect as being the primary outcome that I wished organizational leaders and any other human would really focus on when they think about inclusion. Because one of the things two things I've noticed. One is that this so-called DE&I stuff is just a hot mess, right? People don't understand. First of all, they think it's only for certain people. It kind of creates a rift that is not intentional, but certainly can sometimes be reinforced by those people who want to reinforce rifts. And so we got a marketing problem, but that's not what brought me to this. What I knew from my years of working in corporate America was that when I know my own experiences, and then when I talk to people of color and ask them what is the one outcome, the one thing they wish they could have at work, the word respect was the thing they would often mention. They didn't say equity, they didn't say inclusion, they didn't say a lot of the things that organizations focus on. They say, I want, when I show up in this organization and when I work with anyone in the organization, that at the end of it, I believe that they see my worth as a human on the planet. That's what they craved. But we never talk about respect. So I'd known about this and I thought, well, how do I bring it to the fore? How do I make this a little bit more evident to people that they ought to focus more on respect? And one of the things I learned in the Black community in the United States, and I say learn because as a person who didn't grow up here, I have been sort of a student of the African-American experience and also living it myself in a way. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I learned is that it's not coincidental that there's a song called R-E-S-P-E-C-T. I knew that Black Americans specifically would say things often like, you don't have to like me, but you will respect me. Or they would say, put some respect on my name. I mean, there's a whole list of common language that is used that I had gotten familiar with. And it was the representation of this craving for respect. So that's why I focus on respect.
Mm-hmm. Well,
we got some great comments here too. So we got Bradley saying hello. Whitney, I'm with you there. That's just not right. And then Tran dropped another comment. It's like, everyone, for everyone.
Yeah, that's the other thing about respect, right? Everybody wants it. Everybody wishes for it. It's not just something that causes you then to focus only on one group of people. Mm-hmm. If you can build a respectful work culture, everybody, including your clients and all the other people with whom your employees interact, will get the benefit of that, and you'll get the financial benefit.
Everyone wins.
So let's go here. Dr. Gena, this might be the dumbest question you've ever been asked. You ready? Are you sitting down for this one? You might be.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Are they intentionally disrespectful? Do you think it's out of ignorance? Do you think it's subconscious? What do you think is causing the disrespect? And I guess that's a very broad question, but how would you respond to that question?
Well, if you think about it you can think about this, I think, at the individual or one-to-one level. You can think about it at the societal level. Mm-hmm. But certainly what I believe is that you don't get respect at the societal level until you think about it at the individual level. Yep. And so at the individual level, what we have known just because of history and so on is that there are certain groups in the United States, whether by race or, by LGBTQ plus status, by disability, or even immigrant status, a variety of ways that people vary. There have been groups in the United States that historically haven't really been part of the mainstream. They've been present physically, but they haven't necessarily had access or experiences where all these groups work together, get to know one another, get to understand one another. The biggest issue, the biggest hindrance to that getting together has been segregation. And while many people think that social segregation, let's say by race and ethnicity, is a thing of the past, if you look at the data from Pew Research, what you will discover is that America is as segregated today, if not more so than it was in the 1960s. And that sounds like, how could it possibly be? But it's the reality. We might work together, but we go home to different churches, libraries, grocery stores, and so on. So what that creates is this lack of understanding. So whether people are intentionally doing it, which I do not think most of the time people are saying, I will disrespect this other person. I think what is happening often is that they're just not even accustomed to sort of interacting with this other person in that meaningful way. It's sort of like what I think people of color in the United States, for example, call it an invisibility, right? So this invisibility idea, I think, is the foundation of the problem, because when people say, I want to feel respected, and what the research indicates is that, and I'll be very specific about this research, it's a research that indicates that, for example, white Americans, and I'm calling out white Americans because in terms of the historical power of that group, right? White Americans, when they think about respect, they think about being liked. And so you'll have situations, for example, where an employee of color will say, I'm leaving this company because I don't feel respected here. And the manager will say, oh my goodness, we were really good to this person. We liked them. There was, we didn't have any negative interactions. How could they feel disrespected? And the reason is what the literature says, what the research indicates, is that for a person of color, when they say respected, they're not just talking about interpersonal niceties. They're not just talking about being liked. They're talking about being, heard and valued, believing that their efforts and their ideas are acknowledged, believing that they get credit for those ideas, believing that they will have opportunities for access and promotion and so on. Of course, being recognized and rewarded and so on. The point I'm making here is that the definition of respect varies. The impact or the significance of respect varies from group to group. And so if you're going to be respectful, it's always in the eye of the beholder. You have to have what I say, have curiosity so you can build connection, and so that you can have comfort in that relationship, so that you can really understand what respect means for all the parties involved.
Well, I love that. And again, if you're I lost track of time. Damn it. All right, we're top of the hour. So sometimes we have people just joining us here, Dr. Gena. So I just want, hey, Bradley's dropping comments here.
Yeah, Bradley is great. And you said it earlier too. I think one of the things that happens is you can have no idea because of the cultural differences.
Yes, absolutely. And so like I said, I just came back from London, and wherever I go, I love to sort of, I don't like to just have the tourist experience. I like to sort of, blend in and, ride the tube and look at people and so on and so forth. And so as you do that, you begin to notice certain patterns wherever you go. And so a pattern that you might notice is that, people only wear a certain kind of sneaker, or people don't make a certain kind of contact with one another on the tube, which might feel very different in London than it feels in New York City. And so when you see these differences, you don't say, oh my God, those people don't make eye contact, or, oh, the people in New York are better at this because they do it this way. What you say is like, oh, they're different. It's just a difference. But because you were in that space, in their space, you notice it and you just sort of say, oh. And then if you truly want to blend in, then you sort of go with that, right? But in our experiences where we're so separate all the time, we never really observe those differences. And when we see the differences, we tend to have this approach of avoiding. If you look at the research about what it is that people of color say that they lack most in the workforce, in the workplace, apart from the respect thing, which is a big idea, is they say they don't get feedback from their managers. And so about a year ago, I was giving a talk, and at the end of it, a wonderful young man came up to me and he wanted to ask me a personal a question one-on-one. And he said, I have a Black woman on my team and I don't know how to lead her. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I don't know what to say. I said, okay, let me just tell you the truth. Whoever you got your training, whether it was in school or from whomever, they sold you a bag of goods. A Black woman doesn't need anything different than any other employee on your team. What you're telling me is you're avoiding her, and she knows it. And so here's my big, profound advice for you. Talk to her. Talk to her. Talk to her maybe more now because you never talked to her before. Like, you don't need an MBA to do this. Yeah. And so those are but that's the behavioral consequence that happens when you see something that's unfamiliar. Humans, we want to avoid it, and it gets perpetuated in the workplace situations. It's kind of amusing if you think about it that way. And I like to talk about it that way because people go, yeah, I mean, really, that's it.
That was a drop the mic moment right there, Damon.
Oh my goodness. Like, it is, because it's human psychology, right? I don't understand, so I'm going to avoid.
Yes, that is what humans do. I mean, that is what humans do. That's a natural human reaction. But if you're leading a group of people, I say, you're the designated hitter. If you're my manager, you're it, right? There's nobody else in the organization that I expect to come onto the field and have my back and be my advocate, but you. And so to the extent that you do not do that, I perceive you as a weak leader. And I also perceive that you lack sophistication because you're not opening your mind to be comfortable with the people you lead. So you're still in the hot seat. And that's the thing. You've got to think this way. This is just a part and parcel of effective leadership.
Okay. We're going to take a moment of silence right there, Dr. Gena. We're just going to kind of savor. Like, that was just so much brilliance right there. My goodness gracious. So we need. All right. So first off, if you're Diane just joined us. So hey, happy Friday to everybody out there. If you're just joining us, we have Dr. Gena Cox. Man, is this an amazing conversation right now. This is truly mind-blowing. If you missed it, please go back later, hit the rewind button. You don't want to miss this. Connect with Dr. Gena on LinkedIn. You want to grab her book, Leading Inclusion. So a couple of things I want to unpack. And then you shared with me a really profound, I feel it's a perfect segue here. The gentleman, I want to give a little credit to the guy for the humility to come to you and say, and like reach out and say, like,
absolutely. Yes.
I don't know what to do. I need help. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
And you totally and you summarize it right on the spot, and, lack the sophistication, lack this. So let's say like somebody just like in genuine humility, like I want to understand. And you use a term when you and I spoke recently, blind spot remover. If somebody, whether it's just, lack of experience, lack of skill set, whatever that I have a blind spot remover, like the gentleman, kudos to him for coming up to you, asking for help. What are some tips, some strategies? How can we kind of overcome those blind spots that we have?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to diagnose what's going on here. So I'm thinking about this in the leadership context, in the management context, right?
Yep.
And if you take your 10 people on your team, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, or whatever to get to 10.
We get you.
The first question is you ask yourself, do I have enough information about each of these 10 people as individuals in order to manage them effectively? When you ask yourself that question, you're going to get this feeling in your tummy, because you're going to know, well, C, not so much, and E, not so much. So you'll know this. And then the next question would be, well, what is getting in the way? What is getting in the way of you truly understanding enough about this person that you could be the most effective manager? And so basically, it's sort of a self-awareness. So once you get to that point, now you say, well, what do I do? Right? What do I do about this? You don't need to go and read some complicated actions about what you need to do to fix that problem if you find that, right? Because I'm not even assuming that this is an inclusion issue. I'm assuming this is a leadership opportunity. Mm-hmm. The solution always is then to get closer to that person, to person C and person E. You may already have know the other 8. They might even be part of your inner circle, which is another whole issue. And so what do you do when you go to talk to person C? Person C is now, first of all, going to have their hackles up because they've been watching you for 2 years. Ignore them, or whatever it is they haven't been doing. So once you have that self-awareness, right, you need to approach person C with the vulnerability to say, you know what? I just have this sense in this feeling that we could have a stronger relationship, or whatever words you want to use. Those are my words. But what you're saying is you start off by saying, I am going to solve a problem that I identify. You're not saying anything is wrong with the person. You're not apologizing. You're not doing any of that. You're just basically saying, I want to just talk to you, woman to woman, man to woman, whatever, and say, I feel like we could have a better relationship. You find your words. And the reason that is so important is because this person is watching to see what you're going to do. So if you come in pretending like nothing is wrong or like everything is perfect, that's just going to make them more skeptical. If you come in with a hard-hitting approach where you tell them something about, here's what I think I want to do because I know we have a problem, that's going to make them more skeptical, because how are you going to solve a problem that you don't even understand, right? So all you're doing is just talking to somebody and sort of creating a little bit of space that lets the person know, you know what? I feel we can do better. And you can do this with a spouse. You can do this with a friend. You can do this with a relative. You can do this with a child, because the person already knows about the void, right? About the gap. And so you just be vulnerable, because if you do anything else to fix these kinds of situations, that person goes home and they say to their friends and their spouse, guess what Tommy said to me today? This is how Tommy did for 2 years. And all of a sudden Tommy came and he waved some magic wand and I'm supposed to trust Tommy all of a sudden. And actually it creates a bigger problem. So you just start with the vulnerability. And this is for any conflict situation. It's not unique to the workplace situations, because now the other thing you do is invite that person. You say, are you open for this? Are you willing? And you put the bowling ball in their lap as well, and give them a chance to kind of think about it. And that person is going to say yes. They're going to say yes. They're not going to know where this is going to go. They still have a lot of uncertainty, right? They're not accustomed to this. But they know in their heart of hearts that this is all they've ever wanted. They just never knew how to get it. And now you're opening the door. you got to let them kind of come along with you. And then they'll ask you a lot of questions or not. They might get real quiet. They might not say anything because this is on you. If they get really quiet, here's what you can say. You can say, Gena, I'm really glad that, we're going to work on this. Or I feel like, we see that maybe there can be a chance for us to get a little bit closer. How about we meet next week, Tuesday? You got time on Tuesday? Or what is a good time for you next week for us to continue talking about this? You're in effect creating the partnership. And so this person is going to be leaving. You said Tuesday at 3:00. Now they have between now and Tuesday at 3:00 to think a little bit about this, to kind of watch, to process their feelings. You're not catching them off guard and just dumping stuff on their heads. And then you come back on Tuesday and you say whatever you have to say. And I think the thing to say is, I'm really glad we're doing this. That's all.
Awesome.
Okay. That's moment of silence number 2, Dr. Gena. We're just like, I just like to give everybody just a moment to savor that before we dive into the next one. So that was just absolute pure gold. I want to slide in here for a second. Thank you for a great answer.
Yes.
And the thing is, the way you just described it, and again, for like the gentleman that came up to you, and I like, for people in general, like, whatever situation is, like they want to be better. They want to do better. They want to build better relationships. But boy, we just can't be for, though my mom thinks I'm for everybody, I'm just not, I'm not for everyone, just, and hey, and Whitney had a little mic drop there.
Yeah.
Damon, did you have a comment? I'm going to
Well, the thing is that you're talking about, Dr. Gena, we are not taught this. We are not born with these skills. And very few people even discuss these things. And just the fact that you're bringing it up so succinctly and so common sense approach. I mean, as listening this, I just get inspired by hearing it, because these are things that we could teach leaders everywhere. Yeah. And they could eradicate a lot of challenges in companies just by being simple and with learning. Asking people questions.
Yeah. And I'm not suggesting that anything I just said is easy, because it's an emotional adjustment. It's a change. It's emotional. And that's the other thing we're not taught to do in the workplace, is to sort of deal with our emotions effectively. But ultimately, the most effective managers are the ones who have a relationship with each of the persons on their team, all 10 of them, and understands enough that when that person shows up, it's kind of like how you understand your spouse or your partner or your child. They don't even have to say a word, and you just know they're having a good day, they're having a bad day. Imagine if you could have that sense with the people, on your team.
Well, Damon, that just struck another question. So I have a question for a friend. A friend actually wanted me to ask you a question for Gena. You ready?
A lot of those coming to mind.
Yes.
This is coming from a friend. So let's just say hypothetically, this friend of mine is suffering maybe old guy or old dad discrimination from his teenage daughter, where she got her driver's license and now she doesn't want dad in the car anymore. And dad feels like it's a little bit any advice for that friend of mine? I'm just kidding. Anybody suffer, Damon? You suffer for that one? So I have
never
my friend there, or what?
I have never had that experience. By the way, I refuse to teach my daughter how to drive. I let somebody else professional handle it, and then I let them take all the. There was just too much involved. No. But it's all related to this idea that if you could really understand what's going into what that person is feeling, if you could think about, well, what is she or he feeling that would cause them to be reacting the way they're reacting? Is it that they don't love me anymore? No. Yeah. Is it that they want to assert some independence because this is what people you have to think a little bit about it. And then you have to decide, okay, it's not about me, it's about them. But that's for everything, right? Everything. It really is.
Exactly. So this friend of mine, he's having a little tough time where he's not allowed in the car anymore because she's got to drive by herself. But I'll talk to my friend and I'll tell him that advice. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just teasing. So hey, let's go here. You recently wrote an amazing article for Fast Company, and one of your taglines that I love that and guys, if you missed any of this, please hit the rewind button, go back. catch Dr. Gena's book, connect with her on LinkedIn. There's just a wealth of information here. You use a line, make workplaces thrive without disruption. You just gave us some wonderful tips. And you said this really, I'd like to use the word proud. If I was you, I'd be very proud of that article you just put out in Fast Company. Let's talk about that article that you just put out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wrote an article in Fast Company for Fast Company, and they entitled it "The One Thing Leaders Can Do to Sustain Inclusion" or something like that. But what we're talking about is respect, which is the thing I like to talk about the most. And the main point in the article is that while most of us have heard the word respect ever since we were very small and think we know what it means, most of us, number one, don't know what it means. And most of us also don't realize just how much weight it carries. We tend to confuse it with a variety of things like civility. Like we talk about civility. If we were civil, we think that everything is okay. But civility is really about not being rude or disrespectful. That's what civility is about. And leaders also confuse respect with trust. The thing about trust is that trust is sort of a long-term phenomenon. Most people don't trust any other person in the moment, right? It takes a while. The A happens, you watch what they do at B, you watch what they do at C, and over time, it's sort of that emotion is built. Do you either trust or don't trust? And trust is, when trust is present, you're willing to be sort of vulnerable and open and so on with the other individual. Respect is not the same thing because, first of all, you can't get to trust unless you pass through respect. And respect is one of those things that some aspects of respect are immediate. People are very adept at judging whether they're respected in a nanosecond, right? There's an aspect of respect that's immediate. There's that, right? And so one of the things I point out in the article that I know is the foundation of some of the gaps that we see when we talk about race, ethnicity, and so on in this country, is that individuals who are from traditionally underrepresented groups are highly vigilant for respect. They're constantly scanning the environment to determine if respect is present or absent. And if they get the smallest clue that respect is absent, they will never trust. And so you have to think about all of these things in that very complicated way. Also remembering that respect is in the eye of the beholder, regardless of who you are, regardless of what you look like. It's not up to me to determine if I'm respecting you. It's up to the person receiving your behavior to judge whether they feel respected. It's that sounds kind of like unfair, like a lot of burden. But guess what? It goes back to what we said before. If you're talking to me, if we're connecting, if we're communicating, and we can build that comfort in our relationship, it won't be a mystery. It's only a mystery when we're not connected.
Okay. Man.
I know. As I see the comments rolling, I'm gonna drop some comments. We just gotta go back on this because there's so much here, and we got Gail came in too. So,
hey Gail, happy Friday to you.
Yeah.
Miss you.
Yeah, it's
that you need trust to get respect, and then hey David, how about this one? Somebody got goosebumps on your comment there. So, and Whitney says yes, amen to all that. So again, guys, thank you for all the comments today. This is
okay.
But
oh my goodness. Thank you. It's so cool talking to you.
We're going to start winding down here, Dr. Gena. So this question just hit me. I'm going offline a little bit. Are there any particular companies that you can think of that's like are really kind of leading the pack as far as like your, this respect, direction, this leading the charge with this? Anybody that comes to mind immediately?
Yeah, I mean, there are companies that have sort of clearly defined this into their value system and the way they do things. And, a company like Microsoft, American Express comes to mind. American Express, as an example, is a company that you might not know a whole lot about, which is probably intentional. They're in financial services. They keep a low profile, but they've had this respect value documented in the way that they run their business forever. And what happens with a company like that is that, okay, it might not be maybe the most fun company or the most, I don't know, there might be other things about the company that you would say, you wish it had. But the one thing it always has is that it always has this respect foundation. There's a European company called Nestle, and I don't know if you've heard the name Nestle. Most people have. It's not, especially with regard to consumer products and so on, very big in Europe. And literally, they use this concept of respect as the primary factor that drives their entire business. I mean, this is the thing they focus on. And both of the companies I just mentioned, American Express, primarily, very familiar to Americans, and Nestle, maybe not as more familiar to Europeans as examples, both of these companies are without doubt extremely successful companies that have been able to sustain their business model over decades and decades, and are highly admired, not just in the street, in Wall Street, but also by their employees. The payoff of respect as a focus for an operating a business is that it takes away some of the stress and pressure that acts like a hindrance to performance. It takes away the things that get in the way of me just showing up and doing my job to the best of my ability, and then leaving at the end of the day and going, I did the job. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I know you weren't prepared for that question. So that was a great answer. And, and again, might be easier said than done. And like you said, boy, it's simple. It's just not always easy to do, right? It's simple to try to implement these things. But, we our target are, smaller companies, smaller manufacturers. And so whether you're a 5-person company, 10-person, 20, when you start at the top, you're really intentional. You're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're all going to say dumb, goofy things, or maybe offend somebody, hurt somebody's feelings. But boy, when you show that you care, like you're saying, hey, can we talk next Tuesday? When you show that you care, and I raise my hand, I want to understand, I want to do better. Boy, just look at the opportunity and the possibilities that can happen from that respect standpoint. Damon, what do you have?
Well, and you brought up manufacturing, Kurt, and let's be honest, manufacturing is a melting pot of diversity. I mean, it really is. It's from, you can walk in and you can find people from around the globe in the smallest companies. And we're talking about not just the fact that we grew up in different places. We're talking about English as a second language it could be, and not just one second language, or people that we're talking about with different primary languages too in the same facility oftentimes. So this is so prevalent in manufacturing, and the common sense advice that you gave, Dr. Gena, it's just, get to know these people and ask and just talk with them and understand them. It's so relevant.
And here's a little cheat sheet that I would offer to anyone who's listening, because these are ideas that I think are applicable in groups of 2 all the way up to groups of 100,000 and in a whole country, for example. The way that I define respect, as I said to you before, is it really has this whole to do with this whole idea of, do I feel that you're valuing my humanity, my worth just as this human on the planet? And so there's these 3 elements. This is the checklist. Do I feel seen? Like, this is where sort of the interpersonal niceties, you're acknowledging me, you're making eye contact, I don't feel as if I'm invisible when I'm in your presence, and that sort of thing. So do I feel seen? Do I feel heard? Do you ask for my ideas? Do you use my ideas? Do you value the ideas that I share? Do I feel like that I make a difference in whatever little thing that I do? And if we have time, remind me to tell you a story about this later. So being heard is really important. And then being valued. First of all, it's not just about money. It's not just about compensation. It's about recognition as well. It's about saying, gosh, Gena, I saw you do that thing. Yesterday, I went to Publix and I ordered a Philly steak sandwich in Florida. And I watched the gentleman who was making a sandwich, and he was real particular about what he was doing. And then I said, would you please cutting it in half? And I did all these things, and he did it just so. And at the end of it, I said, I saw what you did there. I saw the care that you put into making this sandwich. You really wanted to get this right, didn't you? That would be an example of recognition, where now for that minute, hopefully for just that minute, he feels like I did a good job, and now I can go on and make my next sandwich. And I intentionally say the words when I see the opportunity. I don't ignore. So recognition and compensation. I'll tell you the other story very quickly. I once worked for a company, and I was walking down the hallway by the mailroom, and everybody in there was laughing, ha 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 ha. And so I stuck my head. I was like, what's going on in here? What's clue me in. And they say, well, okay, this company was acquiring another company that was in another state, and every day they sent packages back and forth during the due diligence process. Okay, So they're sending all these FedEx packages. Let's say each company is sending 50 packages a day coming from different departments within this one company. And they were saying, we just got our 2 p.m. bunch of packages, and we're just laughing because, like, why couldn't somebody just consolidate those at company A, consolidate them at company B, and maybe do a 10 a.m. and a 2 p.m. mailing twice a day, save all this money. And then when the stuff comes in, we can just get it to the right places. I said, well, that's a great idea. Well, why are you laughing? Oh, we're never going to tell anybody about this. I'm like, why? Because they don't want to hear us, right? We don't feel seen, heard, and valued. And so this opportunity to do a process better, to save money while doing the process, to make people feel like they're getting their information to flow more quickly because we have more control of these packages. We're not going to give you that, Mr. Business Owner, that business advantage. You're going to miss that because we don't feel respected.
Moment of silence number 4, I think.
Yeah.
Or 4 or 5, I lost track.
Yeah.
That was a great, that is a great point.
Thank you.
Creating that environment of
Yeah.
just, that was so good.
I've got 2 pages of notes already.
We've got, same here. I've got it all right here. We've got, hey, respect to trust, 2 powerful things for success. And all it takes is one person to hear you. I always make that effort to put myself out there, attend meetings and speak up. That was okay. We're coming. I know I'm keeping you longer than I'm supposed to, Dr. Gena, and this, I could keep you here all day. This is just pure gold of just how to create just a vibrant, safe work environment. You are just doing amazing work. Again, guys, connect with Dr. Gena on LinkedIn, grab her book. Dr. Gena, is there any other thing that you want to share with how people can connect with you? Any other opportunities, any events coming up, anything that you want to share for folks to learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Check me out on LinkedIn because I'm very responsive. If you reach out to me, I'm going to respond to you. Look for my Fast Company article. If you really want to understand some of these ideas in greater depth, Fast Company, Gena Cox. It's also right there on the front page of my LinkedIn. It hasn't even made it to my website yet because it just came out. And I would say, I really want to, especially for your audience, I want to encourage everyone to say that the things that I'm talking about are about, you'll notice they're about the employee experience. That's really my focus. And so think about your job as a manager or as an entrepreneur, or however whatever role you play. Just remember that you need to be that designated hitter. There's nobody else that comes onto the field, or you come onto the field at a time that no one else can do the thing that you can do. And so remember, you're the designated hitter with like a target in the middle of your forehead, where the 10 people on your team or the 2 people on your team, you're it. And so every time that you do a little bit more, you hit that ball or you do whatever it is that you were supposed that they're hoping you will do, you get extra points. It's like magic, and so move forward, move towards your employees rather than, sort of pulling back.
Man, amen. And so, all right, Damon, it sounds like Dr. Gena might be a baseball fan. I've heard, I've heard field, I've heard designated hitter.
Well, I know. It's so funny that you say that. I wouldn't really say that I'm a true baseball fan. I do go to I live in Clearwater, Florida, so I do get to some spring training games and so on. And our Tampa Bay Rays, they're nothing to sneeze at. They're pretty good. But I grew up with cricket. But what I discovered as I was writing my book, I started using this language as I was writing the book, and I was really looking for language that more people would remember and would resonate. And the designated hitter, I almost went with power player because I love the power play in hockey. In fact, why doesn't every professional sport have a power play? You take one person out and you handicap the team. Like, to me, that's the ultimate measure of of a penalty. But on the other side of it, more positively, I thought the designated hitter, comes out and does a thing and that only that person can do. And that is what a manager is.
Well, that's fantastic. And I love Tran dropped this comment here, Damon. Yeah. Be the first to make the change that you want. I absolutely love that line. So, Dr. Gena, let's close it out with this. I have one little last question for you that I'd love to ask before we let you go for the day. So, being that we are jamming about baseball, Damon and I are big, huge baseball fans. And you mentioned, hey, your Rays are nothing to sneeze at, right? Is that the comment that you made, right? So, hypothetically, let's just ask another question here. Let's say that it's the bottom of the 9th. Tampa Bay, it has bottom of the 9th, it's tie score, and there's somebody on second base. Bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, somebody on second. We need a run. Like, we need a base hit. The designated hitter needs to get a base hit to bring. Well, actually, you know what? we don't care for the designated hitter, so we're going to go to a pinch hitter. And the manager of the Rays looks down the bench and he says, "Hey, Dr. Gena, grab a bat, get up to the plate, and hit in this winning run and end this game for me, will you please?"
Yeah.
So you strut up, you throw in your helmet, you grab your bat. As you're walking to the plate, what is your walk-up song?
Oh my gosh. It's probably either going to be RESPECT, because I have to say that, but it's "This Girl Is on Fire."
Oh yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's gonna be that.
Drop the mic number 10. So this girl is on fire in a little R.
No doubt.
Alicia Keys.
That's
There you
right.
go.
So, all right, those were two. You're right on the spot. So that was fantastic. You were a great sport today. So, hey, and
Awesome.
Katie dropped a comment here. Yep, what a great move toward the team, not away from them. So, guys, if you are leading, if you're leading just one person, or even just leading your family, or just organization, someone in your community, whatever it is that in your walk of life, boy, strongly encourage you, invite you, welcome you. Check this show again. Dr. Gena just dropped pure gold. Iron sharpens iron. Damon, I just feel like a better person just being here to catch all this. I almost feel guilty that we got all this information. So thank you, Dr. Gena. This was just such a gift.
Oh, it's been absolutely a pleasure. And just chatting with both of you is a hoot. I mean, this. I think this is why your audience comes back. They come back for the content, but they probably also come back for the feeling, the experience. And actually goes back to what I always say. We talk a lot about customer experience. We need to talk about employee experience, because all any human wants is that feeling. That's great. That's great.
in that recognition, people just love that, like, hey, that a boy, that a girl. And so, and grab her book, connect with Dr. Gena on LinkedIn. And so, guys, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for the comments. We're going to be back here on Monday with another wonderful, amazing, incredible guest. Have a great weekend. Again, happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there. Damon, thank you for your service. Thank you for everybody that served out there. And just, what I love to say, just go out there and just be someone's inspiration, just like Dr. Gena was for all of us today. And before we wrap up, Damon, how about, if you've been sitting around for the past 56 minutes we've been going, it's a great opportunity to stand up and give a big standing ovation for Dr. Gena for just dropping pure gold for all of us today.
Yes.
So, Dr. Gena, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you. God bless everybody out there. Damon, take it away, brother.
Wow, Kurt, what a show. Thank you, Dr. Gena. So much great stuff you shared with us today. I want to thank everyone that was dropping comments today. Katie and Tran and Whitney and Gail and, oh my goodness, Faith and Babu, Ethel, Whitney. I mean, there's just so many people today. Thank you. I'm trying to go back to the beginning to say it, but thanks so much for showing up with us every week and listen to these awesome people that we get. Dr. Gena, nothing short of spectacular today. And if you didn't get this from the beginning, like we said before, go back and start this thing over, because there are some great actionable things that you can do to help create more respect with the people you're around within your organization and just make a better place. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back again next